Radio Free Asia.
As you know, Prime Minister Hun Sen opposed more indictment of suspects of the Khmer leader. He reasoned that to bring more suspects into the court could bring Cambodia back to a civil war. Do you agree with that?
Not at all, no. And I don't agree at all with that. I understand why he's saying it. To my mind, the Prime Minister is saying that because he relies on, as all politicians do, they rely on alliances within government to keep them in power. And among the people he is allied with in government are people who probably should be on, at least investigated for war crimes or crimes against humanity during Democratic Kampuchea's regime. Mm-hmm. That will never happen. And the idea that several hundred aging Khmer Rouge cadre could go back to the jungle and start fighting again, it's just not going to happen. I just don't see that. It would imply that the Prime Minister doesn't have as much control over Cambodia as we know he does with his various alliances. So the problem is a political problem. I don't think there's any issue of civil war returning to Cambodia because a few more people would go on trial. That said, there are only so many people that can go on trial in any judicial process because it's an expensive, time-consuming venture and that there is limited appetite internationally as well as domestically for this tribunal.
Eventually, do you think the Khmer Rouge Tribunal deliver some kind of justice to the victim?
I think it depends on the victim. So for Neri and for Martine, who are the mother and the daughter of Ukket in my book, for them, yes, I mean, they eventually saw Doik sentenced to life in prison. Mm-hmm. They felt that was a suitable punishment.
I see.
And so for them, I think, yes, it was the process itself generated what they see as a fair judicial response. That said, it's what they would most like is, of course, for Ukket never to have been killed at all, never to have suffered at all, as all Cambodians would for their loved ones, and that's simply an impossibility.
I come into possession of the confessions of my father. I give them back to him, and I hope that he will sink with that. As a Cambodian,
son côté obséquieux ne parvient pas à dissimuler auprès de moi la brute cynique et sanguinaire que je connais. En tant que Française, qui a vu tout ce sang couler, les hommes naissent libres et égaux, en dignité et en droit. Tout individu a droit à la vie, à la liberté, à la sûreté de sa personne. Nul ne sera soumis à la torture, ni à des peines, aux traitements inhumains ou dégradants. Je ne sais plus ce que l'on m'a appris à l'école.
S21 prison was a place of quite extraordinary violence. What led those at the facility like Dutch to commit or oversee such crime?
Well, they were operating in a system that encouraged, supported and made it compulsory for one's enemies to be firstly regarded as inhuman or below the status of a human being, and as enemies of the people, any actions against them were totally acceptable. They were in fact encouraged. So torture was encouraged. Every prisoner who went into S21, perhaps a handful survived. The numbers are disputed, but perhaps as many as 20,000 people that went in, almost all of them were eventually executed. The system under Democratic Kampuchea was one of paranoia, was one of black and white. So you are either an enemy or you are reliable. And if you're an enemy, you will be killed. And within a system that divided the population up into enemies and friends of the revolution. And to be in the wrong camp was to be less than human. And to be less than human, it's much easier. We've seen this in many countries. This is not a Cambodian thing. This is a human thing. It's very easy to perpetrate genocide, crimes against humanity, mass killings of people if you divide them between us and them. Mm-hmm. And the them have less value and we've seen it all over the world. Rwanda, my country, South Africa, of course, Nazi Germany, China, Soviet Union. It's common to how we operate as humans, and it's very dangerous. And that's one of the lessons I've tried to bring out in the book, is how careful we have to be with societies that divide us between us and them. It's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah. Doi was eventually jailed for life by the tribunal. During his trial, he spoke regularly of his regret at his accent. You followed the trial closely. Do you believe that he was sincere about his responsibility?
Doik's an interesting character. Was he sincere about his responsibility? I think to a point, yes. But Doik, it has to be remembered, Doik was on trial and trying to evade a life sentence. And there's what people say, and then there's their actions, what they do. I think one of the things that came out of Doik's trial is that he only admitted to crimes where the paper trail that he had helped create absolutely proved that he was complicit, that he was guilty. If there was any debate about any grey area, then he would. We saw this at his trial. He would deny that this witness had worked at one of the prison camps that he'd run. He denied this testimony. No, that never happened. So he's a very slippery character. Was he sincere?
Would like to seek your leave to speak directly to Ms. Ukneri as follows. First, I would like to bow my mind and my body to acknowledge the testimony of this Ukneri as an orphan who lost her father at age 21. In the future, we could hear the testimonies of other orphans who lost their fathers, and I am ready to receive those testimonies. Secondly, the crimes committed at age 21 on the Cambodian people and the nation itself, I have spoken extensively on this. However, my personal crimes on the people who are alive, on the orphans, I do not deny it.
I think he thinks he was sincere, but I also think that as a man who believed in the revolution, he believed he was doing the right thing then. And I think he still perhaps believes that it was worth it in the end. But he's a strange person. And it's quite hard to say. Had I had the chance to interview with him, I might have been able to find that out a bit better. But on balance, I would say at the end of his trial, he asked to be acquitted and released, and that to me is a man who does not, in the end, see that he is responsible.
What do you want your book to achieve for its reader that differentiate it from other books about Cambodia?
So there are a number of other books about Cambodia, excellent books about Cambodia, and broadly they cover a couple of different areas. There's academic books like Ben Kiernan, for example, or David Chandler. There's survivor stories like Thierry Seng and Lung Ung. And there's journalistic accounts of pre-75 or post-79 Cambodia by journalists who have come and written about it. This is different to all of those in the way that it's structured, in the way that I've taken these 5 different lives, and through them I've told this 50-year story of Cambodia. That's not been done here before. Also, what's somewhat unusual about this is that 2 of the 5 people, two of the 5 main people are French, and that's and the other 3 are Cambodian. But those 2 French people, I think, give it a bit of a bridge for a Western audience that doesn't understand, but ought to know more about this most significant crime of the 20th century.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robert Carmichael.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.